A Marvelous Underground Journey. Chapter 1. Bulger is greatly annoyed by the familiarity of the village dogs and the presumption of the house cats. His health suffers thereby, and he implores me to set out on my travels again. I readily consent, for I had been reading of the world within a world, in a musty old, miswritten by the learned Don Foom. Parting interviews with the elder Baron and the gracious Baroness, my mother. Preparations for departure. Bulger was not himself at all, dear friends. There was a lackluster in his eyes, and his tail responded with only a half-hearted wag when I spoke to him. I say half-hearted because I always had a notion that the other end of Bulger's tail was fastened to his heart. His appetite, too, had gone down with his spirits. He had rarely did anything more than sniff at the dainty food which I set before him, although I tried to tempt him with fried chicken's livers and toasted coxcombs, two of his favorite dishes. There was evidently something on his mind, and yet it never occurred to me what that something was. For to be honest, it was something which, of all things, I never should have dreamed of finding there. Possibly I might have discovered at an earlier day that what it was all about, had it not been that just at that time I was very busy, too busy in fact to pay much attention to anyone, even to my dear four-footed foster brother. As you may remember, dear friend, my brain is a very active one, and when once I become interested in a subject, Castle Trump itself might take fire and burn until the legs of my chair had become charred before I would hear the noise and confusion or even smell the smoke. It so happened at the time of Bulger's low spirits that the elder Baron had, through the kindness of an old school friend, come into possession of a 15th century manuscript from the pen of no less celebrated thinker and philosopher than the learned Spaniard, Don Castantino Bartolomeo. And I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. Strephalophagoguamnerphysifum, commonly known among scholars as Don Foom, entitled A World Within a World. In this work, Don Foom advanced the wonderful theory that there is every reason to believe that the interior of our world is inhabited, that, as is well known, the vast earth ball is not solid, on the contrary, being at many places quite hollow. That ages and ages ago, terrible disturbances had taken place on the surface and had driven the inhabitants to seek refuge in these vast underground chambers, so vast, in fact, as well to merit the name of World Within a World. This book was its crumpled, torn, and time-stained leaves, exhaling the odors of vaulted crypt and worm-eaten chest, exercised a peculiar fascination upon me. All day long, and often far into the night, I sat poring over its musty and mildewed pages, quite forgetful of this surface world, and with the plummet of thought sounding these subterranean depths, and with the eye and ear of fancy visiting them, and gazing upon and listening to the dwellers therein. While I would be thus engaged, Bulger's favorite position was on a quaintly embroidered leather cushions brought from the Orient by me on one of my journeys, and now placed on the end of my work table nearest the window. From this point of vantage, Bulger commanded a view of the park and the terrace, and of the drive leading up to the Porte de. Nothing escaped his watchful eye. Here he sat hour by hour, amusing himself by noting the comings and goings of all sorts of folks, from the hawkers of gewgaws to the noblest people in the Shire. One day my attention was attracted by his sudden leaping down from his cushion and giving a low growl of displeasure. I paid little heed to it, but to my surprise the next day, about the same hour, it occurred again. My curiosity was now thoroughly aroused, and laying down Don Fum's musty manuscript, I hastened to the window to learn the cause of Bulger's irritation. Lo, the secret was out. There stood half a dozen mongrel curs belonging to the tenantry of the Baronian lands, looking up to the window, and by their barking and antics endeavoring to entice Bulger out for a romp. Dear friends, need I assure you that such familiarity was extremely distasteful to Bulger. Their impudence from just a little more than he could stand. Ringing my bell, I directed my servants to hunt them away, whereby Bulger consented to resume his seat by the window. The next morning, just as I had settled myself down for a good long read, I was almost startled by Bulger's bounding into the room with eyes flashing fire and teeth laid bare in anger, laying hold of the skirt of my dressing gown. He gave it quite a savage tug, which meant, "Put thy book aside, little master, and follow me." I did so. He led me downstairs, across the hallway, and into the dining room. And then this new cause of discontent on his part became very apparent to me. There, grouped around his silver breakfast plate, sat an ancient tabby cat and 4 kittens, all calmly licking or lapping away at his breakfast. Looking up into my face, he uttered a sharp, complaining howl, as much as to say, "There, little master, look at that. Isn't that enough to roil the patience of a saint? Canst you wonder that I am not happy with all these disagreeable things happening to me? I tell thee, little master, it is too much flesh and blood to put up with." And I thought so too. I did all my power to comfort my unhappy little friend, but judge of my surprise upon reaching my room and directing him to take his place on his cushion, to see him refuse to obey. It was something extraordinary and set me to thinking. He noticed this and gave a joyful bark, and then dashed into my sleeping apartment. He was gone for several moments and then returned bearing in his mouth a pair of oriental shoes, which he laid at my feet. Again and again he disappeared, coming back each time with some article of clothing in his mouth. In a few moments he had laid a complete oriental costume on the floor before my eyes. And would you believe, dear friends, it was the identical suit which I had worn on my last travels in faraway lands, when he and I had been wrecked on the island of Gogula, the land of the round bodies. What did it all mean? Why this, to be sure? Little master, canst thou not understand thy dear Bulger? He is wearing of this dull and spiritless existence. He is tired of this increasing familiarity on the part of these mongrel curs of the neighborhood, and of the audacity of these kitchen tabbies and their families. He implores thee to break away from this life of reverie and inaction, and for the honor of the trumps to be up and away again. Stooping down and winding my arms around my dear Bulger, I cried out, "Yes, I understand thee now, faithful companion, and I promise thee that before this moon has filled her horns we shall once more turn our backs on Castle Trump, up and away in search of the portals to Don Fum's world within a world." Upon hearing these words, Bulger broke out into the wildest, maddest barking, bounding hither and thither, as if the very spirit of mischief had suddenly nestled in his heart. In the midst of these mad gambols, and low rap on my chamber door caused me to call out, "Peace, peace, good Bulger. Someone knocks. Peace, I say." It was the elder Baron with sombre mien and stately tread. He advanced and took a seat beside me on the canopy. "Welcome, honored father," I exclaimed as I took his hand and raised it to my lips. "I was upon the very point of seeking thee out." He smiled and then said, "Well, little Baron, what thinkest thou of Don Fum's world within a world?" "I think, my lord," was my reply, "that Don Fum is right, that such a world must exist, and with thy is weary no. I think that Don Fum was right, and that such a world must exist, and with thy consent, it is my intention to set out to search if its portals with all safe haste, and as soon as my dear mother, the gracious Baroness, may be able to bring her heart to part with me." The elder Baron was silent for a moment and then added, "Little Baron, much as my mother and I shall dread to think of thy being again out from under the safe protection of this venerable roof, the moss-rose tiles of which have sheltered so many generations of the Trumps, yet must we not be selfish in this matter? Heaven forbid that such a thought should move our souls to stay thee. The honor of our family, thy fame as an explorer of strange lands and faraway corners of the globe, call unto us to be strong-hearted. Therefore, my dear boy, make ready and go. Go forth once more in search of new marvels. The learned Don Fum's chart will stand thee by like a safe and trusty counselor. Remember, little Baron, the motto of the Trumps." Excuse me. "Per adrio ad astra." The pathway to glory is strewn with pitfalls and dangers, but the comforting thought shall ever be mine, that when thy keen intelligence fails, Bulger's unerring instinct will be there to guide thee. As I stooped to kiss the elder Baron's hand, the gracious Baroness entered the room. Bulger hastened to raise himself upon his hind legs and lick her hand in token of respectful greetings. The tears were pressing hard against her eyelids, but she kept them back, and encircling my neck with her loving arms, she pressed many a kiss upon my cheek and brow. "I know what it all means, my dear son," she murmured with the saddest of smiles, "but it never shall be said that Gertrude Baroness von Trump stood in the way of her son, adding new glories to the family scutcheon." Go now, little Baron, and heaven bring thee safely back to our arms and to our hearts in its own good time. At these words, Bulger, who had been listening to the conversations with pricked up ears and glistening eyes, gave one long howl of joy, and then springing into my lap, covered my face with kisses. This done, he vented his happiness in a string of ear-splitting barks and a series of maddest gambols. It was one of the happiest, proudest days of his life, for he felt that he had exerted considerable influence in screwing to the sticking point my resolution to set out on my travels once again. And now the patter of hurried feet and the loud murmur of anxious voices resounded through the castle corridors, while inside and out, ever and anon, I could hear the cry now whispered and now outspoken, "The little Baron is making ready to leave home again." Bulger ran hither and thither, surveying everything, taking note of all the preparations, and I could hear his joyous bark ringing out as some familiar article used by me on former journeys was dragged from its hiding place. 20 times a day my gentle mother came to my room to repeat some good counsel or reiterate some valuable caution. It seemed to me that I had never seen her so calm, so stately, so lovable. She was very proud of my great name, and so in fact were every man, woman, and child in the castle. Had I not gotten off as I did, I should have been literally killed with kindness and Bulger slain with sweet cake.